Wuthering Waves 2.0 Rinascita update has been met with great acclaim. From fans, small content creators, large content creators, even other game developers, the reception to Rinascita and Wua's accomplishments has been outstanding. But what has Kuro done so differently with Rinascita compared to the past regions and updates? Sure, we can just list off these things here, but what makes them so successful now? Why is this update being hailed as one of the greatest in the open world and gacha categories? It's time to break down what makes Rinascita so successful. One of the largest criticisms of Wua's 1.0 story was the pacing. The slog through the first few acts of the opening story, the tedium of listening to everyone spew nonsensical terms to new players, and the general lack of any real direction or sense of place in the world portrayed the opening story of Wuwa in a rather bad light. In fact, the first couple of acts can easily just be reduced to
As I fought off those tacit discords, two forces had clashed and collided, and then Rover later told me, and the excess energy this little Okay, now that's pretty much it.
Rinascita's opening acts are a stark contrast to this slow telling of a story. From the very start, the player sails off to Rinascita, gets introduced to Moby Dick, catches a ride from a thespian pirate, catches sight of Carlotta, gets caught by customs, talks to Phoebe, talks to Zani, catches these hands, gets pizza, and gets jumped.
A thundering Mephis type of outing may suit you, hmm?
All of this happens in roughly the first opening 30 minutes of the story, and this cursory summary doesn't even begin to address just how much the player is actually shown the world of Rinascita. The player is shown the rigidness of Rinascita's theocratic culture. The player is shown how the people of Rinascita live alongside their echoes, and the player is slowly shown their place in this arc of the story. And while some of the dialogue with Zani seems to slow the pacing slightly, getting jumped by robotic street performers while having a religious hallucination certainly picks things back up real quick. And did you notice in all that fast-paced action how so many of the main characters are introduced to the player? Brant, Rocha, in the form of a suitcase, Phoebe, Zani, even a little of Carlotta are all presented. A stark difference to 1.0's story. Yanwu, and they don't just revolve around Rover. The characters have their own roles in the story. Naturally, Rover, the main character, is still going to be central to the story, but the characters don't feel like they constantly fawn over and revolve around Rover. And similarly to how the player is shown the world of Rinascita, so too is the player shown the personalities and relations of each of the characters. One of the most simple yet beautiful of these showings is Brant's initial introduction of Rochia to Rover.
All good, Rochia? Some new friends have joined us.
Hello.
The softness of his voice when speaking to the shy and self-encased Rocha is a subtle showing of the care and closeness in the relationship. This relationship is further established in later scenes, but the subtle change of vocal tone shows the player more than the words on the screen tell. And this is a good time to also mention that the English voiceover has improved astronomically since 1.0. Characters like Carlotta, Zani, and even NPCs like Cristoforo are all worth a listen in the English voiceover. And honestly, I'd heavily recommend it just for the diversity of accents alone, because whatever Italian-Spanish mix Zani's accent is really works wonders for the setting.
Do I thank you for that?
But beyond the more subtle showing of characterization, the characters feel as if they all have a degree of depth that wasn't entirely present with the 1.x cast. This is especially noticeable with Phoebe, as the story slowly reveals that the world she believes in, the world the Order of the Deep has propagated, isn't the truth. Her inner conflict is clearly shown and foreshadowed to play a larger role in her character during the future iterations of Rinascita's story. And while I do think that the moral divide of the world could be more ambiguous and gray, such as with the Montellis being the good family and the Thessalias being the bad family, despite both being mafia families to begin with, the characterization of both the world and characters in the story is an improvement from the previous 1.x updates. This improvement extends to the more spectacle-oriented parts of the story as well. The cutscenes, and there are a good amount of them, aren't just there for flash and pizzazz. They help either show some part of the story or push the plot forward. The first cutscene with the whale immediately introduces a creature to play a larger role later in the story, along with Frolova's flower to foreshadow her involvement behind the conflict in Rinascita. The railroaded dragon bridge segment showcases the hostility caused by the Order and Frolova before ever being told about it. And it pushes the player into the next act of the story with the Fool's Truth. Each scene plays a larger role than just be cool in showcasing the world, conflicts, and plot progression of the story of Rinascita. And above all things, Rinascita's story illustrates Kuro's ability to listen to their players. The characters, the pacing, the plot, all of these vast improvements to the story show that Kuro is willing to hear players and adjust their vision for the game to better align with their audience's desires. And while similar things were done before in response to the game's early beta story, the additional time and larger feedback pool has allowed the current story to improve further with Rinascita. The story and world of Rinascita is meant to embody a fairy tale, according to the developers. The entire story itself takes the shape of a play or performance being orchestrated and scripted by Frolova and Cristoforo. But what truly makes this tale special is the charm, the little details that make the experience magical, whimsical, and feel like a fantastical experience. Part of what adds to the charm and fantasy of Rinascita is that it's simply a stark contrast to everything that's come before it. The landscape of Jinzhou, while attractive, is clearly a post-apocalyptic setting. There are ruins of modern buildings, fractured and destroyed landscapes, and areas that feel void of life entirely. And while Mount Firmament and a few other regions in Jinzhou do offer some more vibrant life, they're still marred by the desolate vicissitudes around them. And Mount Firmament itself is rather monotone due to the snowy landscape. 1.3's The Black Shores, while not without its own beauty, does little to break away from the dark and gloom of Jinzhou. Rinascita is largely the opposite of this, though. While it has some areas of desolation, the first impressions and encounters for the player are ones of vibrancy and vitality. Instead of gray destruction, the player is thrust within a lively and colorful city. The very notion of what Wuthering Waves could be, this post-apocalyptic world, is pleasantly subverted. The immediately surrounding environment outside of Ragusa is equally, if not more, vibrant than the city itself, and feels as if it's a blend of the Italian countryside and childlike imagination. And this childlike imagination extends far past the visuals and landscapes. Rinascita is the land of echoes, and the echoes add so much to the whimsy of the region. One minute you could be exploring Ragusa on a gondola echo, or doing aquatic donuts instead of the main story, then the next moment you could be listening to an entire plushy street band. There's even an echo that functions as a song selector for collected songs in the game. You can ride around while taking a bubble bath in a tub pup. Granted, it does move at a snail's pace. Hey, hi, why are you approaching me like that? Can I assist you? You did not need to rub up against my tub pup like that. Really not, helping the allegations against priests over here. If that isn't enough, there's an entire town that is an idyllic and quaint village by day, and a spooky night theme park-like village of echoes by night. The street lamps make silly little noises at you. The Nimbus race cry and heal you if you let them live in a fight. Some enemies bow before attacking. The level of detail of the landscape and echoes is a labor of love that truly makes every part of Rinascita feel like something out of a fantasy storybook. And both the landscape and echoes play beautifully into establishing the unique culture of Rinascita. The echoes feel like a natural part of this culture. They're everywhere, around every corner, at practically every shop and street side. They're even in the air, watching the citizens of Ragusa like something out of Orwell's 1984. The echoes define a major part of the region's culture and lifestyle. But Rinascita is not just its echoes. The region is clearly inspired by Italy, and Ragusa is an obvious stand-in for Venice. The in-game Carnival itself is clearly inspired by the Carnival of Venice. The masks are in the style of various Venetian masks, and some are even echoes that sing at you. There are tons of little nods and nudges towards Italian theater and opera in the region. All of this clearly shows that a great deal of care and respect went into appropriating the source inspiration and transforming it into the vibrant culture of Rinascita. The attention to detail, this passion and love for the world itself is so clearly on display in Rinascita. Perfection is made up of countless little details done right. And Rinascita's culture and charm shines because of the perfected little details scattered throughout the region. I mean, there's even Italian food. Minus one thing.
The pizza Tropicale.
Pizza Tropicale.
Carlotta, take the shot.
In the name of the Montelli.
Of course, it would be criminal to talk about the details and real-world influences, but then gloss over the music of Rinascita. Many have already pointed out the direct references to Mozart's Queen of the Night aria in Lorelei's boss theme. And while I don't profess a musical understanding on par with others who might have already analyzed this update soundtrack to recognize all of the references and details, I do feel it imperative to at least look at the music from a narrative standpoint. This is arguably one of the most magical scenes in the entire 2.0 update. The reveal of a landscape in an open world game is a critical moment for players. They'll be exploring, living, and interacting in that world for extended periods of time. The song A Fairy Tale that plays in this moment is key for setting the proper tone for the landscape of Rinascita. What is presented to the player here is enchanting and carries the promise of a fantastical adventure. The song, especially at the height of its chorus, the part that plays during the full reveal, expresses these sentiments. The player is invited to stop and take in the enchanting journey that they are about to partake in as the song fades away. And this is hardly the only memorable moment that is heightened and made possible by the music. Shortly before this very scene, players are introduced to the Mercurial Cathedral and the song Save Me from the Tides of Mundanity. A song that's vocals, much like Gregorian chants, complete the sense of majesty and awe surrounding the visuals of the cathedral's interior. The combination of the two was enough to make me stop, go back, and slowly walk back through the main chamber. Though, apparently I'm not very religious. These moments of heightened storytelling through the music aren't just reserved for the main story either. During Carlotta's story quest, a particular song plays that assists in conveying her resolve after breaking free from her inner demons. The forward momentum of the lower strings and piano articulates Carlotta's drive and determination to push beyond her past. And if this isn't enough, even a random sonorosphere has a song that coordinates with the background visuals to tell a story of the tragic fate of one of the pilgrims' ships. Of course, using music to help tell a story is hardly something new or exclusive to Rinascita or even Wuthering Waves. But in comparison to the music of Jinzhou in the previous updates, Rinascita's soundtrack feels as if Kuro has finally created memorable, complex songs that fit the tone of the landscape while accenting and telling their own stories in Wuthering Waves. But what of the stories of the players exploring the region of Rinascita and the world quests provided? Much time with an open-world game is spent exploring and experiencing stories and quests outside of the main quest. Many of the world quests in the 1.x updates felt bland, and admittedly, I can't much recall a single one of them with any great detail. However, while I am still exploring all that Rinascita has to offer at the time of making this video, I can say with great certainty that 2.0 offers far more memorable world quests and encounters than the previous updates. There's a quest where you hunt down various knights to return their swords to a grove to then take down another knight. There is a world quest with Phoebe, a future playable character. This is part of a completely missable world quest. And these quests do more than just offer rewards and entertainment. They help establish the lore of the region. They feel a part of the storytelling, as quests, stories should. And they feel good to complete. The exploration itself also feels good. Rinascita introduced flight to the player, and the feature is a massive improvement to exploration. The fluidity, the speed, longevity, and ease of the feature makes it nigh better than simply teleporting around. In fact, it may even be faster than the loading screens in some cases. Not to mention, while flying, the player gets to see the beautiful landscape and skies of Rinascita. These skyboxes are insane. There are whales in the clouds. And while we're on the topic of little graphical details, your characters show visible marks when damaged from combat while exploring around. All of this is to say that there are so many sights to see and things to do while exploring. One minute you could be fighting in a Dream Patrol challenge, then picking up cursed papers as a stuffed rabbit, punching bricks as a teddy bear. Or doing flight challenges through the city. There are even random encounters where you go on an aerial date with Lorelei, fight a three-headed bird, and get so high that you hallucinate Echo's putting on a giant parade for you. Abby, help. The carnival edibles got us messed up. With everything that there is to see and do in the new region, Kuro added a navigation feature that allows players to track numerous different things. This, along with the flight feature, highlights Kuro's value of the player's time. By no means does anyone have to use these features, but the option to do so saves so much time for people and is a blessing for people with a busy schedule. Oh, and did I mention that everything you've been seeing here has been recorded in immersive mode? The 2.0 update also introduced the ability to hide the HUD in the options menu. They even added a hotkey to disable it. Granted, they didn't add a hotkey to enable it. That seems like a bit of an oversight. But all the new changes highlight the fact that Kuro understands that they are making a game before anything else. These features, the flight, trackers, immersive mode, all the encounters and quests, all put fun first. Exploration isn't a tedious chore. It's enjoyable, fast, and full of surprises. It has what one would expect from an enchanting world while providing what one wants from an enjoyable game. But why Rinascita? Why has Kuro suddenly been able to take the rocky start that Wuthering Waves was and transform it into something so beautiful? Perhaps the biggest answer to all of this is time. In time, Kuro had the opportunity to not only hear the feedback of a wide array of players, but also adjust accordingly. This has been evident in the direction of the game's storytelling and quality of life features. Time has also afforded Kuro the means to add so many small details into the game, some that may go completely unnoticed by many players. The love and care put into these details is only possible when developers both have passion for the product of their craft and the time to invest in it. Even the details of the musical direction require time. It takes time to research musical styles and motifs befitting of a specific region. It takes time to understand the source inspiration and then appropriate it faithfully. This may, conversely, also explain why the 1.x story and updates seem so disjointed. After the community feedback from the beta, Kuro listened and tried to course correct, but unlike now, time wasn't available to them. However, each subsequent update since 1.0 has brought new improvements, the music, gameplay, and definitely stability to the game. Rinascita and the 2.0 update is the culmination of these past lessons learned coupled with the time to perfect the craft. Going forward, Kuro has stated that there will be a major update roughly every 6 months. And while I have some concerns regarding the speed that these updates are being produced with, the rapid turnaround on improvements to the game in these last 7 or so months provides some evidence that Kuro can continue to produce high-quality products in that amount of time. After all, it is time that must be provided to developers of any game if the final product is to shine. And Wuthering Waves is shining, brighter than it has ever before.